How's it going, everybody? It's the John Little Fox News, my channel where I talk about anime, video games, cartoons, and today I'm here to talk about your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So basically, I talked about it a little bit in the stream, but I decided, you know what? Let's make a video about my thoughts about what do I think of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man so far. You know, we can have an interesting conversation in the chat and everything. But anyways, this video is going to be somewhat of a review and also a bit of a roast too, because I'm pretty sure you guys already know I do not like this show whatsoever. I had low expectations going into it, and I still have low expectations or whatever about this series. Okay, but I'll tell you the reasons why, of course, as usual, because I just, you know, it's not like my opinions are baseless or founded based off of nothing. So yeah, let's get right into it. So, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is basically a show. It's the latest Spider-Man cartoon that's based on the MCU, where it's an Elseworld story about Spider-Man if he wasn't present during the events of Captain America 3 Civil War. So you know how, like, basically Iron Man had, in Captain America 3, had came in and recruited Spider-Man to be a part of the Avengers to arrest Captain America and stuff, basically. Well, imagine if Iron Man didn't do that and the events still kind of played out the same it did, and Spider-Man was home the entire time. That's pretty much the gist of this show, with a few other stuff added to it, and that here Norman Osborn is actually meant to be replaced for Iron Man to be his like new mentor-like figure and all that stuff, which I'll get into in just a second. But pretty much, it's set during Peter's early freshman days of high school, where he gets his powers from like a spider from another multiverse. A few months later, after becoming Spider-Man, his secret is discovered by Norman Osborn, who kind of recruits him to be a sponsor for like Oscorp. Now, in my opinion, personally myself, this is just as bad as the Marvel Spider-Man cartoon that kind of came out a few years ago, and I'm only just watching this purely just to make fun of it because I just can't take nothing about it seriously. It's meant to be like a homage to the classic Spider-Man comics and an MCU-inspired show, but to me it kind of fails from all fronts. And I just kind of doubt any of the executives or the writers even understand Spider-Man as a character, or let alone had actually read those stories or whatever, you know, because it just doesn't seem like, oh, you might have just looked at a couple of covers or maybe a little bit or skimmed through it and was like, you know what? Yeah, that's kind of cool, but they kind of completely ignored the 60s Spider-Man's characterization, his supporting characters, and the storylines, everything, okay? But I'm going to explain more of my points later in this video. So I'm going to address the elephant in the room, and that is race swaps. Now, I know I've talked about it before, and being a Ninja Turtle fan, now you guys have already heard me talk about race swaps and stuff and what they've been doing lately. But I'm not going to spend too long on this subject, but I will, you know, get this one out the way, okay? So, first off, we already know how I feel about race swaps, that I think it's lazy, dumb, and I feel like it takes away from pre-existing characters that are already in that said universe that they could probably use, but then they get ignored because the writers or the showrunners or executives or whoever is in charge of the creative decisions decided, hey, you know what, let's race swap the more popular character and stuff, or do something to accommodate said actor instead of making actual changes for the fans or for the story or for those original writers that created that said character, you know? So that's where I stand on that one. So one of the most obvious changes are the race swaps of Harry and Norman Osborn, because the actors who play them are black. Now, I've said this before and I'll say it again, how stupid this was, because voicing has nothing to do with physical betrayal unless there's like some kind of accent involved. Then I guess if you wanted to go for a certain character that has an accent or a heavy accent or something, okay, sure. And since this is an animation, they easily could have just kept them white the entire time. But they didn't, because, you know, they wanted to push an agenda, even though I think that Norman's voice is pretty decent. But I still don't think that it's really a good idea to change a problematic character like the Green Goblin of all people and just make him black. I mean, the Green Goblin's done very terrible things, like he's an abusive dad, he impregnated Spider-Man's girlfriend, Gwen Stacy, he killed Gwen Stacy, and he's tortured Spider-Man and even Ben Reilly, Scarlet Spider, on various occasions, okay? So that's honestly kind of hurts Disney's whole representation right there, in my opinion, that they wanted to kind of pull here. And meanwhile, while Spider-Man characters like Norman and Harry get race swapped, original black characters like Robbie and Randy Robertson like they just get ignored. I'm like, if you wanted to use black characters and stuff that are actually like pretty decent, or that are a good, you know, influence and stuff, you could have just used Robbie Robertson, who works at the Daily Bugle. And it's not like he's not a well-known character or anything. He was in Spider-Man the Animated Series. Spantacular Spider-Man, and he was in the Sam Raimi movies, so I don't see why he couldn't have gone with that. Or with Randy and stuff. He's basically about the same age as Peter, and they go to the same college together. And some people kind of think that this show respects the comics. Then they kind of age down Tombstone to be like a classmate and a friend of Peter Parker's when he's supposed to be a problematic villain too, much like Norman. So it just doesn't make any sense. Alright, so here's the difference from the comics. Now, for those who don't know or don't actually read the comics, Peter isn't some geeky nerd that's into pop culture. He's actually more interested in stuff like science and politics more than anything, which kind of alienates him from his classmates because most people aren't really into the stuff that he's into. Which also kind of makes him like, it kind of makes no sense why he's like in like newer stories they keep kind of putting him in some of these big name academies and stuff like, oh look, he's not struggling anymore and stuff like that, when that's more of like Miles Morales' story, not Peter Parker's. Secondly, Peter's uncle dies before he gets his powers, which is really important in my opinion, because Peter was guilted by the fact that his selflessness and his ego had gotten away from stopping his uncle's killer, which apparently the writers of the show must have forgotten, because Peter, at the start, I mean, Peter was a bit of a social outcast, and there wasn't really much people that he really cared about like that besides his aunt and his uncle. So, you know, pretty much that they were his world and all that stuff. So he only cared about taking care of them and whatnot, and using his powers to do so. And so, you know, he was selfish and a little, you know, egotistical and a little arrogant. He let a criminal get away, and you know, that came back to haunt him when that same guy killed his uncle and stuff because he broke into their house. So that's what kind of motivated Spider-Man even further to become a superhero. But it seems like, oh no, he died before he got his powers and stuff, you know? So it just makes it less tragic. And it's, yeah, and like I said, it's a very important factor to why he became a superhero anyways. But yeah, and then some of the supporting characters and stuff, he has like his Pearl and Nico, and they're kind of just miscellaneous characters revised to be kind of like Peter's crush and his best friend, but they kind of leave out like Liz Allen, Betty Brant, who were like, you know, Peter's earlier love interest before Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane, or Flash Thompson and stuff. I know they race swapped Flash Thompson inside the MCU, but they could have brought it back like Flash Thompson from, like, they could have actually brought in the real Flash Thompson, you know, the white blonde guy that used to be Peter's bully that joined the military and stuff and then later on became his friend. Yeah, that same one. And they don't have J. Jonah Jameson either, who obviously is Peter's boss. But okay. And those were his supporting characters throughout his high school days. But instead, nah, they're just making up stuff on their own, like on their own. Again, people think that this show is really paying the 60s like a homage because they kind of gave Peter his yellow civilian outfit and the glasses that he doesn't really need. Because honestly, after he got the spider bite, he shouldn't really need his glasses anymore, and he should probably be a little bit more like bigger and a little bit more like toned than just looking small and meek like he does in the show. And another thing too is I can't really stand that cow Nico, his best friend. Like, she's basically just the Sam Manson of this show, where she's honestly like annoying, condescending, and makes everything about herself whenever like Peter is just doing well for himself or isn't even there, like yeah, like, or when he's just not there for her and her alone and stuff, when they're not even dating. It's just like, wow, like, you guys really thought this is a likable character and stuff, you know? But yeah, and she can't at least pretend to at least be happy for the guy. Like, it's just so dumb in my opinion. And then she's also like kind of the she's just in the hall of infamy right now, right up there with Korean Lois, Black Amber, Androgynous Tila, for just crashing out that, oh, Spider-Man has, or Peter Parker has a secret identity, and he didn't decide to tell her even though they've only known each other for at least a couple of months, and that his secret kind of puts not only her in jeopardy, but his Aunt May and himself in case that got out. So yeah, it's kind of like people forget the whole when they do this trope nowadays, which I don't understand why. It's just artificial drama, honestly, but it's just like, come on. Like, and then they make the guy that's like keeping the secret in the wrong, even though it's like, come on, this is the basic stuff when it comes to a superhero story, or to a secret identity at least. Then there's some guest characters like Doctor Strange, Daredevil, Iron Man, and General Ross. Daredevil was kind of my favorite one, actually being in character and beating the hell out of Spider-Man and stuff. Like, I really enjoyed that. And he's also voiced by Charlie Cox too. But yeah, like seeing him in that episode was definitely that was definitely a breath of fresh air and stuff. And I'm like, man, Spider-Man's quipping this entire time and stuff like that, or he's trying to quip, and I'm just like, Daredevil, please knock his ass out. Like, I've never rooted for Daredevil to whoop Spider-Man's ass this badly before until now. So yeah, I was like, yes, Daredevil, please beat his ass. But anyways, pretty much the only villains that I actually liked here so far in the show is Scorpion and Doctor Octopus so far. But Scorpion, he's kind of like a mix between Earth 616 and Earth 1610. The Maximus Gargan, yeah, that was Miles Morales' villain. Instead of just being a product of like Jameson's incompetence for trying to kill Spider-Man and stuff or unmask him or whatever. But it's no wonder why like Vulture kind of protected MCU Spider-Man from him in prison, because if you guys remember, Scorpion was also inside Spider-Man Homecoming as his civilian self or whatever, or as a convict. And when in that post-credit scene that went nowhere inside Spider-Man Homecoming, he was asking Michael Keaton's Vulture and stuff. He was like, so I heard rumors that you know who Spider-Man is. He was like, no, I don't know who he is. And he was protecting Spider-Man and stuff. Yeah, it's no wonder why he protected him in that movie, because he whooped his ass so badly in this show that it wasn't even like funny, man. But yeah, that's all I got out of that. And Dr. Octopus, I mean, he's somewhat okay in the show, except for like the part where he's kind of a bit of a lazy slob. Like there's a scene where he's just like chilling in his lab playing video games or something, and he's like eating a bunch of Cool Ranch Doritos or whatever. I'm like, that's not Dr. Octopus. But regardless, though, I think he's a decent villain and stuff. He's been pretty much pretty much providing technology and selling weapons and stuff to other villains and all that, like Unicorn or Tarantula and Speed Demon and stuff. Even though the stuff looks pretty like terrible and stuff as far as like design wise and all that stuff, or that arsonist guy or whatever. Yeah, but still, with Dr. Octopus though, his design is actually okay and whatnot. And his voice is, it's alright, I guess. The one thing that's also holding me back, apart from the lazy slob thing, is also like in the jokey stuff that they try to do, like that scene where he was dancing or whatever, and he was having the gunmen or whatever, the people that tried to arrest him, get taken out or whatever. It was kind of dumb. In my opinion. I mean, I think it was supposed to be like a callback to that scene from Spider-Man 2 where like Dr. Octopus like was in the hospital and he killed all those doctors and stuff, and that was like probably one of the most horrific scenes ever inside Spider-Man movies and stuff, where Dr. Octopus like was like blindfolded and his little tentacles was killing everybody and stuff. Yeah, that was crazy. But yeah, here I just felt nothing with this show. And then he gets arrested anyways by Iron Van, so I don't know what they're gonna do with him in the last couple of episodes. Okay, but anyways, but yeah, and then I also don't really like his assistant either. Like I'm like his assistant kind of looks pretty ugly in my opinion and very gay. Like I'm not gonna lie to you, like his hairstyle and the lips and stuff. I'm like, I hope they're not gonna do something weird between him and Doctor Octopus and stuff and try to justify it by being like, well, it's a multiverse, so anything could happen. I really hope they don't do that. But that's just me though, so that's what I think is his villains and his supporting characters so far. Even more proof that this show doesn't understand the basic stuff about Spider-Man or his powers is pretty much how Norman shouldn't have found out about Peter's secret identity on a surveillance camera of all things, at least not without his spider senses going off. And the same thing too when Harry was just conveniently in the same room as like Peter unmasked himself. Like I thought that was kind of dumb, because if you guys like know Spider-Man and stuff or even watch the movies, you kind of know that his spider senses, I wouldn't say will go off on the most littlest things, but when it comes to like even his own secret identity and stuff, his like powers, like his spider senses will tell him no, he will be in danger if this will happen or whatever, or potential danger and stuff like that. It's not just whenever he's like about to get hurt or something like that, So like for example, like remember that scene from like Spider-Man 1 where like it was Thanksgiving and stuff, and like Peter's friends came over to like celebrate Thanksgiving and stuff over at him and Harry's apartment, and Peter just got back from that fight with Green Goblin and stuff, and he unmasked himself, and he his spider senses went off and told him that his family, his friends, are gonna come in the same room. So he like jumped on that ceiling and stuff, and then like when they were like looking around, and then Norman was about to look to the ceiling, Peter jumped off the balcony and everything. Yeah, remember that scene? So I'm just saying, like even that, like even like the Sam Raimi movies and stuff, understood how Spider-Man's spider senses work. Even yeah, and it's the same thing too. Even in like the comics and stuff, like even like Peter can have amnesia and stuff, but as long as he has his spider senses and stuff, it'll probably tell him that he probably shouldn't take off his mask in front of like somebody that means him harm or danger or whatever. You know what I mean? That's how it works. But it not going off when Harry just so happened to be in the room, or not going off when Norman saw him on the surveillance camera and stuff, that's just lazy writing. Especially how, like, because in the comics Norman actually did find out about Peter being Spider-Man, because basically in the main comics, Norman had during a fight he managed to expose Peter to some kind of specialized gas that he had made, that's made specifically to weaken his spider senses and stuff, which allowed him to kind of sneak up on Spider-Man undetected, and he kind of spied on him and then found out his secret identity. So that made sense, but this doesn't. Okay, but anyways, and then there are other times too in the comics where it kind of comes off, whether it's just like whenever just people are close to finding out his secret. But yeah. So that's my main problem here, and I know it's supposed to be a callback to like Spider-Man Homecoming when his friend Ned or whatever found out about his secret identity, but even it should have also went off there too. But it seems like he doesn't have a spider sense for some reason. Personally, myself, I think this show really should have just been a sequel, or just take place after Spider-Man No Way Home and stuff, where it focuses on Peter in his college days or something like that, because it just makes no sense why they just took it back to his high school days and decided, you know what, we can't really make this fit in continuity, so let's just make this an Elseworld story that's parallel to the MCU for some weird reason, which is dumb in my opinion, but okay. But it's Spider-Man, so people are going to just eat it up, right? And then, or you could have just made it into a Miles Morales show or something, where you just made because we all know that across the Spider-Verse, because those writer strikes or whatever, or because of Shamik Moore and all that, they're kind of pushing back that movie and stuff with the whole Across the Spider-Verse thing. So you might as well have just made a Miles Morales show or something like that. And then maybe Peter could be like a mentor or something like that in the background, or who knows. But that's just some ideas right there, just to keep moving forward versus moving backwards and just keep going back to high school this, high school that. It gets annoying. But I'm going to make a separate video about that sometime soon. But anyways, but where was I at? So yeah, or as far as like diverse characters go and stuff, I'm like, yeah, Spider-Man's got a few black characters in his stories and stuff. Like, of course, Joseph Robert Robinson, or aka Robbie Robertson. You could have used him to be like a mentor in Norman's place and stuff, where he doesn't have to know that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, but he's still like a good friend of both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. So he could have been like a good mentor or something like that. You know what I mean? Or a positive influence, because we know Norman's probably just using Peter for the time being and stuff, and that he's going to probably, like, if Peter just derails, or he decides to have, like, just to be against Norman for whatever reason, he's just going to turn against him, or hell, Norman's going to be like a sympathetic type villain or whatever, and I'm just like, nah, I'm just not here for it. Or Harry and stuff, you could have just used Randy Robertson in his place too, but okay. Or here's another idea. You could have used Hobie Brown, which, in case you guys don't know, Hobie Brown is actually the original Prowler and stuff. I know there's Aaron Davis from the Ultimate Comics, but Hobie Brown is the original Prowler inside the main Spider-Man comics and stuff, who's also an original black character and stuff that became the Prowler because he wanted he was an inventor and he wanted to get his stuff out there, so he tried to do a little bit of a stunt, and he got into it with Spider-Man over a misunderstanding and the whole thing, but eventually he ended up becoming kind of like a hero and stuff later on, and he teamed up with Spider-Man a few times. So I'm like, yeah, you could have utilized him inside this show if you really wanted diversity, where he could have been in Lonnie Lincoln Spacier or whatever. But that's just me. But yeah, or if you guys know Hobie Brown, I think he's also Spider-Punk too, from Across the Spider-Verse. So again, but I'm just saying, like, you could have used some of those characters and stuff, but nope. Apparently they get binged or set on the shelf for whatever reason. And honestly, if anyone wants to like really see a good classic Spider-Man stories and stuff really adapted from like the 60s, then I just recommend just go watch the 90s cartoon or the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoons, because they actually did adapt storylines or old like stories from the 60s or whatever into their shows or into the plot and stuff. Even the old 60s cartoon is even better than this, you know, or better than the show ever will be. Or definitely check out the MTV Spider-Man. That's where I'm mostly comparing it to, because I know the animation isn't all there, just like the MTV Spider-Man, but at least they have an excuse because that show came out in like the early 2000s, whereas this show is like literally in 2025, and its animation is not as good as the MTV Spider-Man, or the story, or the characters for that matter. And if you definitely want a show that's not Spider-Man but just has a hero, a token black friend, and an annoying golf girl, then I just recommend watching Danny Phantom in that case. Or even better, watch Iron Man Armored Adventures and stuff, where that's definitely a better show, and that's has like more tolerable characters and stuff, and it's done with a teenage Iron Man, and it's actually done very well. But that's all I have there about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. This is kind of like my mid-season review. The recent episodes that just kind of came out, so I'm gonna check that out later on tonight. So by the time I post this video, I probably would have already seen those episodes by now, but I'll do a full-on review talking about that, and I'm gonna do another video talking about like how I'm just tired of high school plot lines and stuff like that, from certain stuff, or how how well it can be done here, and then how not to do it and stuff like that. But yeah, so anyways, this is the John Lowe Fox, and I'm out. Peace, and until we meet again.